A young woman married an Arab millionaire and disappeared on her wedding night. The luxurious wedding seemed like a fairy tale, but turned into the scene of an inexplicable disappearance. Sarah Matthews clutched her worn backpack tighter as she wandered through Dubai's glittering streets, the scorching afternoon sun reflecting off the towering glass buildings that seemed to mock her predicament. Just yesterday, she had been unceremoniously evicted from her budget hotel after her credit card was declined, the last in a series of misfortunes that had brought her to this desperate situation. The contrast between her circumstances and the luxury surrounding her couldn't have been starker. Wealthy tourists in designer clothes brushed past her, their shopping bags from high-end boutiques swinging carelessly. The sweet scent of expensive perfumes mingled with the aroma of Arabic coffee wafting from nearby cafes, making her increasingly aware of her own disheveled appearance. Her long brown hair, usually neat and styled, hung limply around her face, and her once crisp white blouse was wrinkled from spending the night in a quiet corner of a shopping mall. She had come to Dubai 3 weeks ago for what was supposed to be a promising job opportunity at an international marketing firm. The offer had seemed legitimate, until she arrived and discovered the company didn't exist. With her savings depleted and her return ticket cancelled due to a banking error, Sarah found herself trapped in a city that celebrated excess while showing little mercy to those who couldn't keep up. She had tried everything, calling home, reaching out to embassies, even attempting to find temporary work. But without proper documentation and a valid visa, doors kept closing in her face. The heat was becoming unbearable as midday approached. Sarah ducked into the shadow of a massive shopping complex, trying to gather her thoughts. She needed a plan, but exhaustion and hunger made it difficult to think clearly. Her water bottle was almost empty, and she had eaten her last protein bar for breakfast. As she leaned against the cool marble wall, 2 uniformed immigration officers approached her. Their stern expressions sent a chill down her spine despite the desert heat. "Passport and visa, please," the taller officer demanded in accented English. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for her passport. The document was valid, but her tourist visa had expired 3 days ago. She had been trying to avoid exactly this kind of encounter, knowing it could lead to detention and deportation, though at this point, she wasn't sure if that would be worse than her current situation. "Miss, your visa is expired," the officer stated flatly, examining her passport. "You'll need to come with us to the immigration office." The second officer stepped closer, speaking rapidly into his radio in Arabic. Just as Sarah felt her world crumbling around her, a commanding voice cut through the tension. "There seems to be a misunderstanding, gentlemen." The voice belonged to a tall, elegantly dressed man who appeared seemingly out of nowhere. His presence immediately commanded attention, and even the officers straightened their postures. Karim al-Rashid, though Sarah didn't know his name yet, stood there in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that seemed to defy the heat. His dark eyes assessed the situation quickly as he stepped between Sarah and the officers. With the confidence of someone accustomed to authority, he addressed the officials in fluent Arabic, his tone leaving no room for argument. Sarah watched in astonishment as the officers' demeanor changed completely. They went from intimidating to almost deferential in seconds. She couldn't understand the rapid exchange, but she caught her own name being mentioned several times. The mysterious man turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Miss Matthews," he said, surprising her with the use of her name. "These officers were about to make a serious mistake. I've explained that you are my fiancée and that there was an administrative error with your visa renewal." His eyes held hers, conveying a silent message. "Play along." The officers returned her passport with apologetic nods. As they walked away, Sarah remained frozen in place, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. The man who had saved her from certain detention stood watching her with an intensity that made her both grateful and uneasy. "So you look like you could use a proper meal and a safe place to rest," he said, his voice softer now but still carrying that note of authority. "I'm Karim al-Rashid, and I have a proposition for you, one that could solve your current predicament, if you're willing to listen." Sarah knew she should be suspicious of this too convenient rescue, but her options had run out. The alternative was facing deportation and the shame of returning home with nothing but debt and broken dreams. She looked up at the towering Burj Khalifa in the distance, its spire disappearing into the hazy sky, and made her decision. "I'm listening," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Karim gestured toward a sleek black car that had appeared at the curb. Then let's discuss this somewhere more comfortable. My driver will take us to my residence where we can talk properly. He opened the car door, waiting for her response. Sarah hesitated for just a moment before sliding into the cool interior of the luxury vehicle. As they pulled away from the curb, she caught her reflection in the tinted window. A tired, desperate young woman putting her trust in a stranger. She could only hope she wasn't making the biggest mistake of her life. The drive through Dubai's opulent streets felt surreal to Sarah as the luxury car glided past the city's landmarks. Karim sat beside her in composed silence, occasionally answering business calls in Arabic, while she tried to process the dramatic turn her day had taken. The car eventually turned onto a private road, approaching massive gates that opened silently to reveal a modern palace that took Sarah's breath away. The residence was a masterpiece of contemporary Arabian architecture, with traditional geometric patterns seamlessly blending into sleek, modern lines. Fountains danced in the manicured gardens, their spray creating rainbow prisms in the late afternoon sun. As they stepped out of the car, the scale of the building made Sarah feel even smaller than she already did in her disheveled state. "Welcome to my home," Karim said, guiding her through enormous carved doors into a marble-floored foyer that could have housed her entire apartment back home. "My staff will show you to a guest suite where you can refresh yourself. We'll talk over dinner." An elegant woman in a traditional black abaya appeared, introducing herself as Amira, the head of household staff. She led Sarah through corridors decorated with a tasteful mix of ancient artifacts and modern art, eventually arriving at a suite that was larger than any hotel room Sarah had ever seen. "Everything you need will be provided," Amira said, opening a massive wardrobe to reveal an array of new clothing in Sarah's size. "Dinner will be served in 2 hours. I'll return to escort you then." Left alone, Sarah stood in the middle of the room, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in her circumstances. Just hours ago, she had been contemplating spending another night in a shopping mall. Now she was standing on Persian silk rugs, surrounded by luxury she had only seen in magazines. The bathroom was a sanctuary of marble and gold fixtures. Sarah spent nearly an hour in the shower, washing away the grime and worry of her homeless days. She chose a simple but elegant black dress from the wardrobe, marveling at how perfectly it fit. As she styled her hair using the provided products, she barely recognized her reflection. When Amira returned, she led Sarah to a terrace overlooking the gardens. Karim was waiting, having changed into more casual but still impeccable attire. The table was set for an intimate dinner, with the Dubai skyline glittering in the distance. "You look refreshed," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "I hope you'll find everything to your satisfaction." As servers brought out course after course of exquisite Middle Eastern cuisine, Karim finally revealed his proposition. "I understand you're in a difficult situation with your visa," he began, his dark eyes studying her reactions. "I can help you remain in Dubai legally, but it would require a certain arrangement." Sarah set down her fork, her appetite suddenly diminishing. "What kind of arrangement?" "A marriage of convenience," he stated matter-of-factly. "You would have legal status as my wife, and in return you would attend certain social functions and maintain the appearance of a proper marriage for a specified period." The proposal hung in the air between them as Sarah processed his words. "Why would you offer this to a complete stranger?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Karim's expression remained carefully neutral. "I have my reasons. My position requires a wife for social and business purposes. You need legal status and security. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. And after this specified period, you would be free to go, with enough resources to start wherever you choose." He leaned back, watching her. "So of course there would be a contract, and you would be well compensated for your time." Sarah's mind raced. The practical part of her knew this could be her way out of an impossible situation. The romantic in her recoiled at the idea of a loveless marriage of convenience. "How long would this arrangement last?" "1 year," he replied. "Though the contract would include provisions for early termination if either party wishes it." A warm breeze carried the scent of jasmine from the gardens below, and Sarah found herself studying the enigmatic man across from her. Despite his kindness, there was something guarded about him, something that suggested hidden depths beneath his polished exterior. "What about your family?" Wouldn't they object to you marrying a foreigner you just met? A shadow crossed his face. My family's opinions are not a factor in this decision. I am the head of the Al Rashid business empire, and my choices are my own. Sarah stood and walked to the terrace railing, looking out over the magnificent gardens. The rational choice would be to accept his offer. It would solve all her immediate problems and potentially set her up for life. But something about the situation nagged at her. "Why me?" she asked, turning back to face him. "Surely there are many women who would jump at this opportunity." Karim joined her at the railing, his presence both commanding and somehow comforting. "Perhaps it's because you didn't jump at the opportunity," he said quietly. "You ask the right questions, you maintain your dignity even in desperate circumstances. These are rare qualities." The sincerity in his voice made Sarah's heart skip a beat. She looked up at him, trying to read the truth in his eyes. When would this need to happen? "Soon," he replied. The ceremony would be small, traditional, just the necessary officials and witnesses. Sarah took a deep breath, the scent of night-blooming flowers filling her lungs. She thought about her options, or lack thereof, and made her decision. "I accept," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Karim nodded, satisfaction flickering across his features. "We'll handle the paperwork tomorrow. For now, rest. Amira will help you with anything you need." As Sarah followed Amira back to her suite, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped into something far more complex than a simple business arrangement. The palace's grand corridors seemed to whisper secrets, and even the moonlight streaming through the ornate windows felt like it was trying to tell her something she couldn't quite understand. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Sarah found herself swept up in a flurry of activity as seamstresses took measurements. Jewelers presented traditional pieces, and various officials came and went with documents requiring her signature. Through it all, she caught only glimpses of Karim, who seemed perpetually engaged in business meetings and phone calls. One morning, while exploring the palace's vast library, Sarah encountered an elderly man who introduced himself as Hassan, Karim's uncle and senior advisor. His weathered face carried a warmth that put her at ease, but his eyes held a hint of concern as he studied her. "You remind me of someone," Hassan said, his accent thick but his English precise. "Has anyone told you that you bear a striking resemblance to someone from this family's past?" Before Sarah could respond, Karim appeared in the doorway, his expression tightening at the sight of them together. "Uncle, I believe the board members are waiting for you in the conference room." Hassan nodded slowly, patting Sarah's hand before leaving. "Welcome to the family, my dear. May Allah guide your path." The interaction left Sarah unsettled. She turned to Karim, who was already heading toward the door. "Wait," she called after him. "What did he mean? Who do I remind him of?" Karim paused, but didn't turn around. "The past is better left in the past," he said firmly. "Focus on the present. The ceremony is tomorrow." The traditional wedding ceremony took place in a private room of the palace, decorated with thousands of white flowers and flickering lanterns. Sarah wore a stunning white gown that combined Western and Middle Eastern elements, her dark hair adorned with delicate pearl pins. The ceremony was conducted entirely in Arabic, with a court translator whispering the proceedings to her. As she repeated the words she was told to say, Sarah noticed something odd about the documents being presented. They seemed more extensive than she had expected, but whenever she tried to get a closer look, someone would distract her with another tradition or ritual. The celebration that followed was intimate but lavish, with only a select group of family members and business associates in attendance. Sarah observed the complex dynamics at play, the way some guests seemed to scrutinize her every move, while others barely concealed their disapproval. Among them was Karim's older brother Adnan, whose congratulatory smile never reached his eyes. He approached Sarah during the celebration, speaking in perfect English. "My dear sister-in-law, you've certainly brought an interesting element to our family. I do hope you understand what you've gotten yourself into." Before she could respond, Karim appeared at her side, his hand possessively at her waist. The tension between the brothers was palpable, crackling like electricity in the air. Later that evening, as the celebrations wound down, Sarah retreated to the palace gardens for some air. The night was unusually cool, and the scent of jasmine hung heavy in the air. She found herself drawn to an ancient decorative structure near the center of the garden, a small pavilion covered in intricate mosaic patterns. As she traced the patterns with her fingers, she discovered what appeared to be writing etched into one of the tiles. The inscription was in Arabic, but below it was a date and a name in English. Sophia Al-Rashid. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Karim's voice startled her. He stood at the pavilion's entrance, his expression unreadable in the shadows. "Who was Sophia Al-Rashid?" Sarah asked directly, tired of the secrets that seemed to lurk in every corner of the palace. Karim's jaw tightened. "You should get some rest. It's been a long day." "No," Sarah insisted, standing her ground. "I agreed to this arrangement, but I deserve to know the truth. Why did you really choose me? What aren't you telling me?" For a moment, something vulnerable flickered across Karim's face. He stepped closer, close enough that Sarah could see the internal struggle in his eyes. "Some truths are better revealed slowly," he said softly. "Trust that everything I've done is for the best." Sarah felt her frustration mounting. "How can I trust when I'm surrounded by secrets? Your uncle's strange comments, your brother's veiled threats, this mysterious Sophia. It all feels connected, and I'm the only one who doesn't know how." Karim reached out as if to touch her face, but stopped himself. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow I'll explain everything, but tonight you should return to your suite. It's not safe to wander the gardens at night." "Not safe?" Sarah's voice rose slightly. "What could possibly be dangerous in your own garden?" But Karim had already turned away, his silhouette rigid with tension. "Please, just go inside. We'll talk tomorrow." Sarah watched him disappear into the darkness, her mind racing with questions. As she turned to head back to the palace, a cool breeze rustled through the pavilion, carrying what sounded like a whispered warning. She hurried her steps, unable to shake the feeling that she was being watched. In her suite, she found an ornate box on her bedside table. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with an inscription in Arabic. She held it up to the light, noticing that it looked antique, well-loved. As she clasped it around her neck, she caught her reflection in the mirror and gasped. For a moment, in the dim light, she could have sworn she saw someone else's face looking back at her. The morning after the wedding dawned with an unusual fog rolling in from the desert, shrouding the palace grounds in a mystical haze. Sarah woke early, her fingers immediately reaching for the antique necklace she had found the night before. The weight of it against her collarbone felt strangely familiar, as if it had always belonged there. She dressed carefully in one of the conservative but elegant outfits that had been provided for her, then made her way to the breakfast terrace. Instead of Karim, she found Amira waiting with a troubled expression. "Mr. Al-Rashid has been called away on urgent business," Amira explained, pouring Arabic coffee into a delicate cup. "He asked me to show you around the palace properly today, to help you become familiar with your new home." Sarah's disappointment must have shown on her face, because Amira added softly, "Perhaps this tour will answer some of your questions, my lady." The palace was even more impressive in daylight. Each wing told its own story through architecture and decor, spanning generations of the Al-Rashid family's history. As they walked, Amira explained the significance of various rooms and artifacts, but Sarah noticed she would sometimes hesitate before certain doors, steering them in different directions. They reached a long gallery lined with family portraits. Sarah's steps slowed as she approached one particular painting, her heart beginning to race. The portrait showed a young woman in traditional dress, but with strikingly Western features. The resemblance to Sarah was uncanny. "That's her, isn't it?" Sarah whispered. "Sophia Al-Rashid." Amira nodded slowly. "Mr. Karim's first wife. She was much beloved by the household. What happened to her?" Before Amira could answer, a sharp voice cut through the gallery. "Filling our new guest's head with old stories, Amira?" Adnan emerged from a connecting corridor, his expensive suit at odds with the traditional surroundings. "Just giving the tour you requested, sir," Amira replied, her eyes downcast. "I'll take it from here." Adnan dismissed her with a wave. Once Amira had gone, he turned to Sarah with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "So, my dear sister-in-law, how are you finding married life?" "It would be better if I understood what I've married into," Sarah replied carefully. Adnan chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "Oh, but you do understand, don't you? On some level, you must know why my brother chose you. The resemblance is remarkable." He gestured to Sophia's portrait. "She was quite the scandal when Karim brought her home. A Western woman, just like you. She had such grand ideas about modernizing our traditions, opening up our business practices." Some said she had too much influence over my brother. Sarah felt a chill despite the warmth of the day. You speak of her in the past tense. Yes, well, tragic accidents can happen in old palaces with so many hidden passages and structural secrets. Adnan's voice was casual, but his eyes were sharp. You should be careful exploring on your own. These walls hold many mysteries. Before Sarah could respond, a commotion erupted somewhere in the palace. Servants rushed past the gallery entrance, their voices urgent but hushed. Adnan's phone buzzed, and his expression changed as he read the message. If you'll excuse me, it seems my brother has encountered some difficulties with the board of directors. Business matters, you understand. He bowed slightly and left, his footsteps echoing through the gallery. Left alone, Sarah approached Sophia's portrait again. The young woman's eyes seemed to follow her, holding secrets she desperately needed to understand. The antique necklace suddenly felt heavier against her skin, and with a start she realized Sophia was wearing the same piece in her portrait. Sarah's fingers traced the inscription on the necklace, and on an impulse, she pulled out her phone to translate it. The words made her blood run cold. To protect the keeper of secrets. The sound of approaching footsteps made her quickly pocket her phone. A young servant appeared, slightly out of breath. My lady, Mr. Al-Rashid has returned and requests your presence in his study immediately. Following the servant through the maze-like corridors, Sarah's mind raced. The similarities between her and Sophia couldn't be coincidence. Karim's urgent selection of her, the rushed wedding, the strange warnings, it all had to be connected. The study door was heavy wood, carved with the same geometric patterns she'd seen throughout the palace. As she raised her hand to knock, she heard raised voices from within. Karim and Adnan were arguing in Arabic, their tones sharp and angry. She caught her name, then Sophia's, followed by words she didn't understand, but that made Karim's voice rise in obvious fury. There was a crash, like something being thrown, and then sudden silence. Sarah's hand trembled as she finally knocked. The door opened to reveal Karim alone, his usual composure slightly fractured. Behind him, she could see a shattered vase near the window, water and flowers scattered across the expensive carpet. Come in, he said, his voice strained. It's time we talked about Sophia. Sarah stepped into Karim's study, her heart pounding. The room was a blend of old-world charm and modern efficiency, with leather-bound books lining the walls and a state-of-the-art computer setup on an antique desk. The shattered vase near the window was a stark reminder of the argument she had overheard. Karim moved to the wet bar in the corner, pouring himself a glass of water. His hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly. I apologize for the delay in our conversation, he began, not quite meeting her eyes. Things have become complicated. Sarah remained standing, her fingers unconsciously tracing the outline of the necklace beneath her blouse. I think I deserve to know what's really going on, Karim. Who was Sophia, and why does everyone keep comparing me to her? Karim sighed heavily, setting down his glass and moving to a leather armchair. He gestured for Sarah to sit in its twin across from him. Sophia was my first wife, he began, his voice low and tinged with an emotion Sarah couldn't quite place. We met in London, where I was overseeing the expansion of our family's business interests. She was brilliant, passionate about architecture and cultural preservation. When I brought her back to Dubai, I thought we could bridge two worlds. Sarah leaned forward, captivated by the story and the raw emotion now evident in Karim's eyes. What happened? At first, it was magical. Sophia brought fresh ideas to our business, suggested ways to modernize while respecting our traditions. But not everyone in the family or on the board appreciated her influence. He paused, a shadow crossing his face. There were those who saw her as a threat to the old ways of doing things. Your brother, Sarah ventured, remembering Adnan's thinly veiled hostility. Karim's jaw tightened. Adnan was vocal in his opposition, but he wasn't alone. Sophia started receiving threats. Anonymous notes, strange accidents around the palace. I tried to protect her, but he trailed off, standing abruptly to pace the room. Sarah waited, sensing there was more to the story. One night, about a year into our marriage, Sophia disappeared. She had been exploring the old tunnels beneath the palace. She was fascinated by their history. I searched for her for days, but all we found was her scarf near one of the sealed entrances. Karim's voice cracked slightly. The official investigation concluded that she must have fallen into one of the old wells, or gotten lost in the tunnel system. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. But you don't believe that? Karim turned to face her, his eyes intense. I believe she found something in those tunnels, something that certain people didn't want discovered. The night before she vanished, she told me she was close to understanding the true legacy of the Al-Rashid family. She was excited, but also scared. And you think this is connected to why you chose me? Sarah asked, pieces starting to fall into place. Karim nodded slowly. When I saw you in trouble with those immigration officers, the resemblance was shocking. But it was more than that. You had the same fire in your eyes, the same determination Sophia had. I thought maybe you could help uncover the truth. Sarah stood, her mind reeling. So this marriage, this whole arrangement, it's all about finding out what happened to Sophia. Not entirely, Karim said quickly, moving closer to her. The threats against our family's control of the business are real. I do need a wife for social and business reasons. But yes, I hope that with you here, looking so much like her, it might shake loose some information. Make someone nervous enough to make a mistake. Sarah felt a mix of emotions, anger at being manipulated, sympathy for Karim's loss, and a growing sense of determination. These tunnels, she said slowly, do they still exist? Karim's eyes widened slightly. Most of them were sealed off after Sophia's disappearance. It was deemed too dangerous. But there are rumors that some passages remain accessible. Just then a soft knock interrupted them. Amira entered, her face pale. I apologize for the intrusion, sir, but there's a situation in the East Wing. Some of the board members have arrived unexpectedly and are demanding to speak with you. Karim cursed under his breath. I have to deal with this, he told Sarah. We'll continue our conversation later. Please, for your safety, don't go exploring on your own. There are forces at work here that we don't fully understand. As he hurried out with Amira, Sarah was left alone in the study. Her eyes were drawn to a small, ornate box on Karim's desk. It was similar to the one that had contained the necklace she now wore. Acting on instinct, she opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellow with age. Sarah's hands shook as she unfolded it, revealing a hand-drawn map. It showed a series of tunnels beneath the palace, with one section circled in red ink. Next to the circle, in what she recognized as Sophia's handwriting from the portrait, was a single word: truth. Sarah's heart raced as she quickly took a photo of the map with her phone. She could hear voices approaching the study. Quickly replacing the map and closing the box, she moved away from the desk just as the door opened. Adnan entered, his eyes narrowing as he saw her. Ah, my dear sister-in-law, exploring your new domain. Sarah forced a smile. Just admiring the view, she said, gesturing to the window. If you'll excuse me, I think I need some fresh air. As she left the study, Sarah's mind was already racing with plans. The map, the tunnels, the secrets, it was all connected. And she was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The next few days passed in a blur of social obligations and carefully orchestrated appearances. Sarah found herself thrust into the role of the perfect wife, attending charity events and business dinners at Karim's side. She played her part well, charming the elite of Dubai while secretly observing every interaction, every whispered conversation. Karim remained distant, consumed by whatever business crisis had arisen. Sarah caught glimpses of heated arguments behind closed doors, saw the worry lines deepen on his forehead. She wanted to ask him more about Sophia, about the tunnels, but there never seemed to be a right moment. It was during one of these lavish events, held in the palace's grand ballroom, that Sarah's patience finally wore thin. She excused herself from a group of socialites, their laughter grating on her nerves, and slipped away into a quiet corridor. As she leaned against the cool marble wall, trying to gather her thoughts, she heard hushed voices around the corner. Curiosity got the better of her, and she inched closer to listen. "The girl is a liability," a man's voice hissed. Sarah recognized it as one of the board members she had been introduced to earlier. Bringing her here was a mistake. She's asking too many questions. "Patience," came Adnan's smooth reply. "She may yet serve our purpose. If she's as clever as Sophia was, she might lead us right to what we've been searching for all these years." Sarah's heart raced. Whatever secrets lay hidden in the palace, it was clear that multiple factions were after them. She couldn't wait any longer for Karim to open up to her. It was time to take matters into her own hands. That night, after the guests had departed and the palace settled into an uneasy quiet, Sarah prepared for her clandestine exploration. She changed into dark, comfortable clothes and pulled her hair back into a tight braid. The photo of the tunnel map glowed on her phone screen as she studied it one last time. Using the staff passages Amira had shown her during the tour, Sarah made her way to the east wing of the palace. According to the map, there was an entrance to the tunnel system hidden behind a panel in one of the older storage rooms. The room was cluttered with antique furniture and dust-covered boxes. Sarah's fingers traced the intricate woodwork along the walls, searching for any sign of a hidden mechanism. Just as she was about to give up, her hand brushed against a small indentation. With a soft click, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow passageway. Sarah hesitated for just a moment before stepping into the darkness. The air was cool and damp, heavy with the weight of centuries. She switched on her phone's flashlight, illuminating rough stone walls covered in a fine layer of cobwebs. As she descended deeper into the tunnel system, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. What had Sophia discovered down here? What secrets could be so important that people might be willing to take such drastic measures to keep them hidden? The tunnels were a maze, twisting and turning in ways that didn't always match the map. Sarah relied on her instincts, following passages that seemed to lead toward the center of the palace complex. She passed ancient storerooms filled with crumbling artifacts, narrow channels that might once have carried water, and even what looked like a long-abandoned guard post. After what felt like hours, Sarah reached a circular chamber that seemed to match the area Sophia had marked on the map. The walls here were different, smoother, with faint traces of carved symbols that her flashlight couldn't quite illuminate clearly. In the center of the room stood a stone pedestal. Sarah approached it cautiously, her heart pounding. There was an indentation on top of the pedestal, roughly the size and shape of... With trembling fingers, Sarah unclasped the necklace she had been wearing since her wedding night. The pendant fit perfectly into the indentation. As she pressed it down, she heard a series of clicks echoing through the chamber. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a hidden alcove. Inside, Sarah found a dusty leather-bound journal and a small wooden box. Her hands shook as she opened the journal, recognizing Sophia's handwriting. "I've found it," the first entry read. "The true legacy of the Al-Rashid family. It's not just about the business empire or the ancient artifacts. There's something much bigger at stake here. Something that could change everything if it falls into the wrong hands." Sarah was so engrossed in the journal that she almost missed the sound of footsteps echoing from the tunnel behind her. She quickly tucked the journal and box into her bag, retrieving the necklace from the pedestal. As she turned to leave, a beam of light cut through the darkness. A familiar voice called out, tinged with a mixture of relief and anger. "Sarah, what are you doing down here?" Karim emerged from the shadows, his face a mask of concern and something else, fear. Behind him, Sarah could make out other figures approaching. She squared her shoulders, knowing that the game had changed. Whatever secrets lay hidden in the depths of the palace, she was now irrevocably part of the story. "I think," she said carefully, meeting Karim's gaze, "that it's time for the whole truth to come out. All of it." The tension in the circular chamber was palpable as Karim and Sarah faced each other, the beam of his flashlight illuminating the determination in her eyes. Behind him, Adnan and two board members emerged from the shadows, their expressions a mix of surprise and barely concealed anger. "You shouldn't be down here," Karim said, his voice low and urgent. "It's not safe." Sarah stood her ground, clutching her bag with Sophia's journal inside. "I think it's time we all stopped talking about safety and started talking about truth. What really happened to Sophia? What is this legacy that's worth hiding in underground tunnels?" Adnan stepped forward, his usual smooth demeanor cracking slightly. "This is family business, my dear. Things you couldn't possibly understand." "I understand more than you think," Sarah retorted, pulling out Sophia's journal. "And I think Sophia understood too before she disappeared." The effect of the journal's appearance was immediate. Karim's eyes widened in recognition, while Adnan's face paled visibly. One of the board members made a sudden move towards Sarah, but Karim held up a hand to stop him. "Where did you find that?" Karim asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah explained about the map, the pedestal, and the hidden alcove. As she spoke, She could see the pieces falling into place in Karim's mind, emotions flickering across his face too quickly to read. "We need to discuss this somewhere more appropriate," Karim finally said, gesturing towards the exit. "This isn't the place for such revelations." The group made their way back through the tunnels in tense silence. Sarah could feel Adnan's eyes boring into her back, but she kept her focus on Karim, who seemed lost in thought. They emerged into the palace proper and gathered in Karim's private study. As soon as the door closed behind them, Adnan rounded on Sarah. "You have no idea what you've done," he snarled. "The damage you could cause to this family, to our entire legacy." "Enough, Adnan," Karim interrupted, his voice carrying an authority that silenced everyone in the room. He turned to Sarah, his expression softening slightly. "You've been braver and more resourceful than I gave you credit for. I think it's time you knew the whole story." Over the next hour, Karim revealed a tale that stretched back generations. The Al-Rashid family, he explained, had always been more than just successful merchants and businessmen. They were the guardians of an ancient secret, a collection of artifacts and knowledge that dated back to the earliest days of civilization in the region. "These artifacts," Karim said, "they're not just historically significant. They contain information, scientific advancements, philosophical ideas, maybe even technological concepts that were far ahead of their time. If used correctly, they could revolutionize everything from energy production to medicine. But in the wrong hands, they could be weaponized," Sarah finished, understanding dawning on her face. Karim nodded gravely. "For generations, our family has protected these secrets, slowly releasing innovations to the world when we felt humanity was ready. But there have always been those who wanted to exploit the knowledge for their own gain. Like certain members of the board," Sarah guessed, glancing at the two men who had remained silent throughout the explanation. "We believe in progress," one of them spoke up defensively, "in using our resources to their full potential. Why hide advancements that could benefit humanity immediately?" "Because some advancements require wisdom to wield properly," Karim countered. "Our ancestors understood this. Sophia understood this." At the mention of Sophia's name, the room grew quiet again. Sarah opened the journal, finding a passage near the end. "She writes here about a key, something that would unlock the full potential of the artifacts. Is that what she was looking for in the tunnels?" Karim's expression darkened. "We never found out. After she disappeared, we sealed off most of the tunnel system. I couldn't bear the thought of anyone else getting lost down there." "But she didn't just get lost, did she?" Sarah pressed, looking around the room. "Someone made her disappear because she was close to finding the truth." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Adnan shifted uncomfortably, while the board members exchanged glances. "We can't change the past," Karim said finally. "But we can decide how to move forward. Sarah, you've become entangled in something much bigger than a marriage of convenience. The question is, what do you want to do with this knowledge?" Sarah looked down at the journal in her hands, then at the faces watching her expectantly. She thought about Sophia, about the secrets hidden beneath their feet, and about the potential for both great good and terrible harm that lay within those ancient artifacts. "I want to finish what Sophia started," she said firmly. "I want to find the key, unlock the true potential of these artifacts, and make sure they're used for the benefit of all humanity, not just a select few." Her words seemed to echo in the quiet room. Karim's eyes met hers, a mix of admiration and concern in his gaze. Adnan's face was unreadable, while the board members whispered urgently to each other. "You don't know what you're getting into," Adnan warned, but there was a hint of respect in his voice now. "Maybe not," Sarah agreed, "but I'm willing to learn, and I think it's time the Al-Rashid family remembered its true purpose as guardians, not just businessmen." As the gravity of her decision settled over the room, Sarah realized that her life had changed irrevocably. The marriage that had begun as an arrangement of convenience had become something far more complex and dangerous. But as she met Karim's gaze again, she saw something new there, a partnership forming, built on shared purpose and growing trust. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with hidden dangers and ancient mysteries. But for the first time since arriving in Dubai, Sarah felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. In the days that followed Sarah's discovery in the tunnels, the atmosphere in the palace changed dramatically. The facade of a simple arranged marriage crumbled, replaced by a tense alliance focused on unraveling the mysteries Sophia had left behind. Karim set up a secure room where Sarah could study Sophia's journal without fear of interference. As she pored over the pages, she found herself growing closer to the woman she had never met. Sophia's passion for history, her keen intellect, and her determination to protect the al-Rashid legacy shone through in every entry. One afternoon, as Sarah was cross-referencing some of Sophia's notes with ancient texts Karim had provided, she stumbled upon a breakthrough. "Karim!" she called out excitedly. "I think I found something!" Karim hurried over, leaning in to examine the passage she was pointing to. Sophia had written about a series of seemingly unrelated historical events, shifts in trade routes, unexplained technological leaps, and the rise and fall of obscure desert kingdoms. She believed these events were all connected to the artifacts, Sarah explained, her eyes shining with excitement. And look here, she mentions a pattern, a sequence that repeats throughout history. What if this sequence is the key we've been looking for? Karim's brow furrowed in concentration as he studied the notes. "It's possible," he said slowly, "but we'd need to verify this against our family records, some of which are stored in our most secure vaults." As they discussed the implications of Sarah's discovery, neither of them noticed the shadow that passed by the partially open door. Later that evening, Sarah found herself unable to sleep, her mind racing with possibilities. She decided to take a walk in the palace gardens, hoping the night air would clear her head. As she approached the ornate fountain at the center of the garden, she noticed a figure already there. Adnan couldn't sleep either, he asked, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. Sarah nodded, wary but curious about this unexpected encounter. "Too many thoughts," she admitted. Adnan gestured for her to sit beside him on the fountain's edge. "You've surprised us all," he said after a moment. "When Karim first brought you here, I thought you were just another of his impulsive decisions. But you're proving to be much more." "Is that a compliment?" Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. Adnan chuckled softly. "Perhaps. I've spent my life trying to protect this family's interests. Sometimes, I fear, at the cost of its soul." He turned to look at her directly. "You remind me of what we're supposed to stand for, of what Sophia tried to teach us." The vulnerability in his voice caught Sarah off guard. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I fear we may be running out of time," Adnan said gravely. "There are forces at work here beyond just our family and the board. People who would stop at nothing to get their hands on the power our ancestors protected." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "What do you mean?" Before Adnan could answer, they heard hurried footsteps approaching. Karim appeared, his face etched with worry. "Sarah, Adnan, you need to come quickly. There's been a breach in the secure archives." They rushed to the underground vault, where the most sensitive al-Rashid family documents were kept. The heavy door stood open, its sophisticated lock somehow bypassed. Inside, drawers had been rifled through, and several key documents were missing. "How is this possible?" Sarah gasped, taking in the scene of disarray. Karim's jaw was set in a grim line. "Only a handful of people have access to this room. Someone on the inside must be working against us." As they surveyed the damage, Sarah's eyes fell on a small object half hidden under a fallen stack of papers. She bent to pick it up. It was an ancient coin, one she recognized from Sophia's descriptions in the journal. "Karim, look at this," she said, holding it up to the light. The coin bore a series of symbols around its edge, eerily similar to the sequence Sophia had documented. Karim's eyes widened in recognition. "This shouldn't be here. It's part of a set that's supposed to be in a separate vault, one even I don't have direct access to." "Someone's playing a game with us," Adnan muttered, his earlier vulnerability replaced by a calculating look. As they stood there, piecing together the implications of the break-in and the mysterious coin, Sarah felt a shift in the air. The search for the truth about Sophia and the al-Rashid legacy had just become a race against an unknown enemy. "We need to accelerate our research," Karim said, his voice tight with urgency. "Sarah, your insights into Sophia's work are more crucial than ever. We have to find the key before whoever did this decodes it first." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. She thought of the sequence in Sophia's journal, the mysterious coin in her hand, and the vast network of tunnels still unexplored beneath their feet. "I think," she said slowly, a plan forming in her mind, "it's time we went back into the tunnels." Whatever Sophia found down there, whatever made her a target, it's our best lead now. Karim and Adnan exchanged a look, years of mistrust momentarily set aside in the face of a common threat. It's dangerous, Karim warned. Everything about this is dangerous, Sarah countered. But if we don't take risks now, we might lose everything your family has worked for generations to protect. As the three of them stood in the violated vault, the weight of history and the urgency of their mission settled over them. Sarah realized that her impulsive decision to accept Karim's proposal had led her to this moment, standing on the precipice of a mystery that spanned centuries. With the coin clutched tightly in her hand, Sarah made a silent promise to Sophia and to herself. She would uncover the truth, protect the legacy, and in doing so, perhaps find her own place in this intricate tapestry of secrets and power. The race was on, and the next chapter of the Al-Rashid saga was about to be written. The following days were a whirlwind of preparation and tension. Sarah, Karim, and a small team of trusted individuals worked tirelessly to decipher the clues left behind by Sophia. The coin they had found became the centerpiece of their investigation, its mysterious symbols aligning with patterns Sophia had documented in her journal. As they delved deeper into the research, Sarah found herself growing closer to Karim. The facade of their arranged marriage had given way to a genuine partnership, built on mutual respect and a shared sense of purpose. She caught him looking at her sometimes with an expression that went beyond mere admiration, but neither of them had the luxury of exploring these budding feelings. The stakes were too high, the danger too immediate. On the eve of their planned expedition back into the tunnels, Sarah stood on the balcony of her suite, looking out over the twinkling lights of Dubai. The city seemed a world away from the ancient mysteries that consumed her days and nights. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her reverie. It was Amira, her face etched with concern. "My lady," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "there's something you need to see." Amira led Sarah through a series of back passages to a small, hidden observation room overlooking the main courtyard. Through the one-way glass, Sarah saw a group of unfamiliar men in suits speaking with Adnan. The conversation looked tense, with Adnan gesticulating angrily while the men remained stoic. "Who are they?" Sarah asked. "I don't know," Amira replied, "but they've been coming more frequently. Always at night, always meeting with Mr. Adnan or some of the board members. I fear they may be connected to Miss Sophia's disappearance." Sarah's heart raced. She knew she should tell Karim immediately, but something held her back. Adnan's recent show of support, his apparent change of heart, had it all been an act? Before she could decide on a course of action, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Sarah and Amira rushed to the main hall, where they found Karim coordinating with security personnel. "What's happening?" Sarah asked, breathless. Karim's face was grim. "Someone's accessed the main tunnel entrance. We have intruders." Without hesitation, Sarah said, "We need to go down there now. Whatever they're after, we can't let them find it first." Karim nodded, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of pride and concern. "It's dangerous, but you're right. We don't have a choice." They quickly gathered their research materials and essential equipment. As they prepared to descend into the tunnels, Adnan appeared, looking flustered. "What's going on? I heard the alarms." Karim briefed him quickly. Sarah watched Adnan's reactions carefully, but his concern seemed genuine. "I'm coming with you," he declared. The group made their way through the winding passages, the sounds of their pursuers echoing distantly behind them. Sarah clutched Sophia's journal and the coin, feeling as though the weight of history rested in her hands. They reached the circular chamber, where Sarah had first discovered the hidden alcove. Karim began examining the walls, looking for additional hidden mechanisms. "Sophia's notes mentioned a final chamber," he muttered, "a place where all the secrets converge." As they searched, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Adnan positioned himself near the entrance, keeping watch. Suddenly, he called out, "They're close. We need to hurry." Sarah's fingers traced the symbols on the walls, her mind racing to connect the patterns with what she had learned from Sophia's research. In a moment of clarity, she understood. "The coin!" she exclaimed. "It's not just a key, it's a map." She placed the coin in a small indentation they had overlooked before, aligning its symbols with those on the wall. With a low rumble, a section of the floor began to descend, revealing a spiral staircase leading even deeper underground. Go, Adnan urged them. I'll hold them off. Karim hesitated, looking at his brother. Years of mistrust warred with the need for unity in this crucial moment. Finally, he nodded. Be careful, he said. Sarah and Karim hurried down the staircase, the sounds of confrontation fading above them. The air grew thick with ancient dust as they descended into a vast, domed chamber. At its center stood a pedestal supporting what looked like a metallic orb, covered in the same intricate symbols they had been studying. This is it, Karim breathed. The source of all the knowledge our family has been protecting. As they approached the pedestal, the orb began to glow faintly. Sarah reached out, her fingers hovering just above its surface. In that moment, she understood the true weight of the choice before them. This knowledge could change the world for better or worse. Whatever happens, she said, turning to Karim, we face it together. Karim took her hand, their eyes meeting with an intensity that spoke volumes. Together, he agreed. Just as Sarah was about to touch the orb, a voice rang out from the staircase. I'm afraid I can't let you do that. They turned to see Adnan descending the stairs, followed by the men in suits Sarah had seen earlier. His expression was a mix of regret and determination. I'm sorry, brother, Adnan said, but the world can't wait any longer for this knowledge to be released. We need it now to face the challenges of our time. You don't understand the consequences, Karim argued. Our ancestors knew the danger of releasing this power all at once. As the brothers faced off, Sarah's mind raced. She thought of Sophia, of the centuries of guardianship the Al-Rashid family had maintained, and of the future that hung in the balance. In that split second, she made her decision. With a swift motion, Sarah grabbed the orb from its pedestal. The chamber filled with a blinding light, and she felt a surge of energy course through her body. Visions of past and future flashed before her eyes, the cumulative knowledge of countless generations flowing into her consciousness. When the light faded, Sarah stood transformed. She understood now the true purpose of the Al-Rashid legacy and the role she was meant to play in its continuation. This power doesn't belong to any one person or group, she declared, her voice resonating with newfound authority. It belongs to all of humanity, to be released gradually as we grow wise enough to use it responsibly. The men with Adnan stepped back, awed by the display. Adnan himself looked shaken, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. Karim moved to Sarah's side, taking her hand once more. What happens now? He asked softly. Sarah smiled, feeling the connection between them strengthen. Now, she said, we begin the real work. Together, we'll guide the world into a new era of enlightenment, not through force but through wisdom and patience. As they stood in the ancient chamber, the future stretched out before them, a path of challenges and wonders, with the promise of a better world waiting to be built.